Hammerhead worms are showing up in gardens everywhere, and most people don't even realize what they're looking at until it's too late. If you've ever lifted a pot, moved aside mulch, or watered early in the morning and spotted a long, slimy, ribbon-shaped worm with a shovel-shaped head, then you've just met one of the most destructive soil predators in the modern garden. And if you're building up your worm population to improve your soil, compost, or raised beds, hammerhead worms are the last thing you want roaming your yard. Today we're going deep into what they are, why they're spreading, how to get rid of them safely, and how to protect your earthworms so your soil life doesn't collapse. This is a problem many gardeners are quietly struggling with, but you're about to understand it fully. Hammerhead worms are not worms at all, they're flatworms, an invasive species originally from Asia. What makes them especially destructive is their diet. They prey almost exclusively on earthworms and other soft-bodied soil organisms. So, hammerhead worms, they actually track earthworms with a chemical sense that's kind of similar to smelling, and then, get this, they immobilize their prey by using secreted neurotoxins. When hammerhead worms kill earthworms, your soil loses one of its most important partners. Earthworms build structure, increase aeration, speed up decomposition, carry organic matter deeper into the ground, and, create natural drainage tunnels. Remove earthworms from the equation, and, honestly, you end up with compacted, lifeless soil that really struggles to hold water or nutrients. Another reason hammerhead worms are so challenging is their ability to regenerate. If you cut one worm into 10 pieces, you end up with 10 worms. This makes them almost impossible to eliminate through physical destruction alone. They're designed to survive. A lot of gardeners feel like they just showed up overnight, but they're spreading for several reasons. The first is climate. As the weather shifts toward warmer, wetter patterns, hammerhead worms find better breeding conditions. So, they actually prefer moist, shaded environments, basically the same places where earthworms thrive. That means they tend to follow water, humidity, and organic material. Another major reason, honestly, is the movement of soil products. Things like imported mulch, compost, bagged soil, and even potted nursery plants can unfortunately carry hammerhead worms or their cocoons. Once they're introduced to a yard, they'll settle into mulch layers, compost piles, lawn edges, and garden beds before you even realize it. Heavy rains also bring them to the surface. After big storm cycles, gardeners often see them on driveways, patios, and walkways. Humidity provides them a perfect environment to move and hunt more actively. In short, they're spreading because we've created ideal conditions for them, and because they feed on earthworms, they can do real damage very quickly. If you find one, the worst possible thing you can do is chop it with a shovel or trowel. Every severed piece becomes a new worm, each capable of reproducing on its own. This is why, many gardeners who thought they killed it suddenly find more about a week later. Another mistake is, handling them with bare hands. Hammerhead worms release chemical secretions that can irritate your skin, and they also produce a neurotoxin to subdue their prey. You also don't want to leave them on the soil or just toss them aside because they can actually survive for hours out of the ground. You need to kill them thoroughly and safely. And fortunately, there are several proven methods. So, there are 4 main approaches gardeners use depending on whether they prefer natural or chemical control. Citrus oil is actually the quickest natural solution. Just mix 1 tablespoon of citrus oil with 1 cup of water, and then pour or spray it directly onto the worm. Citrus oil breaks down their outer layer really fast, killing them within seconds to minutes. A second option is white vinegar and salt, which is a simple and accessible combination. A strong 50% vinegar solution with a heavy sprinkle of salt directly on the worm works reliably. Boric acid is, another extremely effective method. A light dusting directly on the worm dehydrates and kills it quickly. Boric acid can also be placed strategically in areas where you've seen hammerheads before though, you don't want to overuse it in garden beds. If you prefer not to spray or dust chemicals, you can use physical removal. Always use gloves or tongs. Place the worm into a sealed plastic bag and add salt, vinegar, or even hand sanitizer. Seal the bag fully and throw it into the trash. This method prevents accidental regeneration or escape. Killing the worms you see is only half the battle. Preventing them requires adjusting your garden habits slightly. First, watch your mulch layers. Thick mulch that stays damp becomes a perfect habitat. In warm, humid climates, a thinner mulch layer, around 2 inches, can make a large difference. Shaded, damp corners of the garden should be opened up slightly to increase airflow. Hammerhead worms thrive in still, moist environments. Improving airflow makes the microclimate less attractive. Overwatering shaded beds is another common mistake. If you're running drip irrigation or overhead sprinklers, make sure shaded areas aren't receiving the same amount of water as sun-exposed beds, and always inspect new soil products. Nursery stock compost and mulch can hide small hammerhead worms or their cocoons. Turning the top layer and checking for movement only takes about 5 minutes, but honestly, it can save your entire garden ecosystem. Predators help but don't eliminate the problem. Birds, frogs, and toads will eat hammerhead worms when they find them, but, they're not consistent enough to rely on as primary control. Your best defense is to monitor the areas where earthworms cluster, lift cardboard occasionally, and, peek under mulch near compost piles. Also, check those damp corners after rainfall. You can apply diatomaceous earth in rings around worm-rich zones. Hammerhead worms avoid crossing diatomaceous earth because it damages their tissues, while earthworms remain mostly unaffected if the diatomaceous earth stays dry. Keeping compost covered, especially with fabric lids, helps because hammerhead worms are attracted to the moisture and food scraps. Covering prevents them from entering and hunting. Finally, adding biochar creates a soil structure earthworms love but hammerhead worms tend to avoid. It's a long-term protective measure that improves soil health while reducing flatworm activity. Hammerhead worms are a rising problem for gardeners everywhere, but once you know how they work, how to kill them, and how to protect your earthworms, you can keep your soil life thriving. If you want a full follow-up on how to rebuild soil biodiversity after a hammerhead infestation, just let me know. And don't forget to subscribe and share this with other gardeners who may not even know what's lurking under their mulch.